So what are the learning outcomes of today's session? So as I said, we're going to be focusing on using Scopus, which is a tool that we subscribe to explore author profiles. So by the end of the session, I'm hoping you will be better able to actually access Scopus. If you haven't accessed Scopus already, you'll hopefully be able to know how to do that and explore an author profile. So that would be analysing the collaborators of an author, analysing the sources an author is publishing in, and analyse which outputs are receiving the most attention. And then at the end of the session, I'm going to briefly just chat a little bit about using metrics responsibly, because we all need to be aware of responsible metrics, because we are using bibliometrics, we're using metrics when we're looking at the Scopus and looking at some of these things, and we need to make sure that we're using them responsibly. So we are going to be doing bibliometrics today. You may or may not have heard of bibliometrics. But this is what we're going to be doing. Bibliometrics is a field of study which analyses and measures the impact of research outputs, and it uses quantitative methods. So a lot of the time you may hear that bibliometrics is about how many times an author has been cited. It does use the citation numbers, but it allows us to do a lot more than just looking at kind of how many times a piece of research has been cited. It allows us to look really deeply into those research outputs. It shows the reach of your publications. So, you know, who's citing your work, where are those people from, which institutions, which countries. It can help you to find out about new areas of research. So what appears in your area, what areas are they researching in. It can help you find new research collaborators. It can help you when you're thinking about where you want to publish. It can help you with identifying sources in which to publish. And then you can use all this information to help you strengthen those funding and job applications that you may put in. So we're going to be using Scopus today. So Scopus is a tool that we can use to get bibliometric data. It's a large multidisciplinary database. So you may have heard of Scopus if you've done any literature searching before. You may have searched Scopus to find some information, to find some literature to inform your own research. But it also allows us to get some bibliometric data. Scopus is kind of similar to some of the other sources out there. So you may have also heard of Web of Science. Web of Science is another large multidisciplinary database where you may have done some literature searching. And again, you can get some bibliometric data out of that. So we can get bibliometric data out of Web of Science, out of Scopus. There is a tool called Dimensions that we can get some bibliometric data out. And we actually have a trial subscription to that for a year. So we do have access to that at the moment. There is a tool called Insights, which actually uses data from Web of Science, and it's a more advanced bibliometric tool. We don't have access to that at the moment, but I just wanted to mention it. But we do have access to SciVal, which is another advanced bibliometric tool that uses the data from Scopus. So if you're just doing some initial analysis and want to get some initial bibliometric data, Scopus is a really good place to start. But if you want to take that extra step and maybe do a bit more advanced analysis, you can use SciVal, and that uses data from Scopus. And if you are wanting to know more about Scopus, about SciVal, please do contact us, and we can support you with that. Also, we have Google Scholar as well. Obviously, you can get some bibliometric data out of Google Scholar. We have to be cautious about using Google Scholar because we don't really know what is in Google Scholar. It just web crawls for its data, so we don't know what journals are in there, what data it's using to make those bibliometric data. So it is a common one that people use, but we do advise that SciVal, Scopus, Web of Science are more reliable in terms of getting bibliometric data. But today we're going to be using Scopus, so we will be showing you how to do that. So just before I start talking about Scopus, and we'll have a go at it, just to kind of clarify what is in Scopus and how things link together. So we can search for authors in Scopus, and we can analyse their outputs and analyse their collaborators. And that's because everything that's put in Scopus, so an article, so for example, if an article is put in Scopus, our authors are attached to that article, and all those authors are attached to an affiliation. Okay, so it's kind of a circle. They're all connected together. So articles are written by authors, and authors are affiliated with institutions. So that allows us in Scopus to search for this data, to search for those outputs, or search for those articles, or even search for those affiliations. And all of these things are linked together, and it will give us some metrics. Okay, so now I'm going to actually start telling you about exploring an author profile in Scopus. So why would we want to do an author profile analysis? Why would we want to go and find an author in Scopus and have a look at some of the metrics? So you may want to search for yourself. If you have started publishing already, you may want to go into Scopus and start searching for yourself. Or you may want to start searching for other authors. So I don't know, you may want to search for your supervisor or other researchers within your area that you know are publishing quite a lot in your specific area, and you can start to analyse their profiles, who they're collaborating with and things like that. So if you are looking for yourself, it can help you to understand the reach of your publications. You can start to see who's citing your work. Which institutions are they from? Which countries are they from? Where are they publishing their research? And it allows you to really understand who's using your research. But it can also help you to discover new collaborators. So if you do search for another author who's publishing in your research area, you can actually see who they're collaborating with, because that then may lead you to identify collaborators for yourself if you are wanting to find potential collaborators. Analysing author profiles can help you do that. It can also help you identify where other journals that you might want to publish in the future. So if you are searching for other researchers in your area, you can start to have a look at where are they publishing, which journals are they publishing, or also which research areas are they publishing in. It might help you to identify other similar research areas within your discipline that you may not be aware of or may not be that familiar with, and you can start to analyse and have a look at where are researchers publishing, which research areas are they doing their research in. It can also help you to become aware of which of your papers are receiving the most attention. So it's always nice to know, if you have started publishing, which ones are receiving that highest attention, who's using, which of the papers are getting those higher citations, or which are the ones that are receiving that attention more than others. That can be nice to know as well. We can also use this to find out about funding sources as well. So we can analyse an author profile and have a look to see where they're getting their funding from, and that might enable you to identify some funding sources in the future. And one of the key things that we always tell authors is to go into Scopus and check your author profile. So if you have got an author profile, if you have published something and it's been indexed in Scopus, you will have a Scopus author profile. And you should, throughout your career, throughout your research career, you need to be keeping this up to date and checking that it's correct. You need to make sure you only have one Scopus profile, one author Scopus profile. And if you have things like an ORCID, which is a digital author identifier, that it's linked, all those accounts are linked together. This is useful because sometimes institutions, funders may go into Scopus and have a look at your record. So it's important that you only have one, that all your publications are linked to that specific profile. So yeah, we really encourage you to do that as well. Okay, so I am going to go on to doing a bit of a demo on using author profiles. So first of all, we're going to go into Scopus. We're going to try and find an author, have a look at their profile, and we're going to see if we can find their collaborators, so who they're collaborating with, and also which papers are receiving the most attention. So I am going to do a little demo now. So you may just want to kind of look at what I'm doing initially, because then when I've done that demo, I'm going to give you a bit of time to actually log into Scopus and have a go yourself and try and find an author profile. So whether that might be you, if you have got some publications, or a researcher in your research area that you are aware of. So I am initially going to share my screen with you. So I'm just going to stop sharing this and share my screen. So to get access to Scopus, as I say, it's a tool that we subscribe to. So we pay to access this tool. So you need to access it via the library website. So all of our things that we subscribe to, you need to access. The best way to access it is via the library website, and then it will ask you to log in with your university username and password, and it should give you access to that resource. So hopefully this might look familiar to you. Don't worry if not, but this is the library homepage. This is where you can access all of our resources. And so you just need to be searching for Scopus in the search box and just click on search. So what it usually does, if you're searching for a database, it usually puts these suggested databases at the top. So it's suggesting Scopus here, which is what I want, but it's also suggesting Scival because it knows Scival uses the data from Scopus, and it's another bibliometric tool. So it's just giving us both of these. But all you need to do is click Go to Scopus. So I didn't tell you how to get to the library website, did I? Usually I just Google Leeds University library website, and it's the first one that comes up. Okay, so it's not asked me to log in because I've already logged in and it's remembered me, but it will at some point ask you to log in, so you just need to put your username and password in there. Okay, so once you're in Scopus, This might look familiar to you if you have done literature searching before and used Scopus. It's one of the biggest multidisciplinary databases. So if you are doing a literature search, you might want to have a look on Scopus because it does contain a lot of information from all subject disciplines. So, but today we're going to be, rather than searching for documents, we're going to be trying to find an author profile. So this is where we need to go into authors here. So this is where you need to start putting the name of the author. So you need to know the surname and the first name, or the first initial. So if you're searching for yourself, obviously that you're going to know that, but you may need to do a bit of digging if you're wanting to search for a different author. You might need to find out what their first name or first initial is. So I'm going to just do a demo search. I'm going to search for a researcher called Maria Bordons. So I'm just going to put her surname in here. And I'm just going to put her first initial, so it's Maria, but you can just put M. If you know the affiliation, you can add affiliation here and add, Leeds University or whatever, but you don't have to do that. So I'm just going to put Maria M and click search. Okay, so what Scopus does, it searches in Scopus for all the author profiles that match my search. And you can see here it's actually found 2. So this is a good example of someone who has actually got 2 Scopus profiles in Scopus. They've got 2 author Scopus profiles. And really we want it to be aiming for 1 Scopus profile for each author. So you can see that Maria does have one here, and I think this is her main one because she has got 81 documents. But there is another sneaky one here, and I'm guessing this is the same Maria Bordons because she's from Madrid in Spain. But there is just one article attached to this. So if I was Maria, I really should be coming into Scopus and merging these 2 profiles if I was confident that this was from me as well. So if you do look in Scopus and you find that you have got 2 profiles, you just need to make sure that these articles are your articles. But if you did want to merge, you could just click on those 2 and request to merge authors, and that would go to Scopus, and Scopus would check that. So that does take a couple of weeks, but we do really recommend that you come in here. It just helps it's just easier if your papers are all in one author profile. And we do a lot of bibliometric analysis for schools and faculties at the University of Leeds, and we rely on these Scopus profiles. So if someone does have more than one, we're not going to be capturing all of their research in the analysis that we do. So yeah, that's just my plug to in the future. If you haven't started publishing yet, when you do, please do maintain and check your author profiles. But to get to Maria's author profile, what I'm going to do, I'm going to assume that this is her main profile because it's got 81 on there. So I'm actually going to go through to her author profile by clicking on her name here. Okay, so this is what an author profile in Scopus looks like. So it gives me the name, it gives her most recent affiliation. So she's over in Madrid in Spain at this institute. This is her Scopus author ID. So every Scopus author has a Scopus author ID. She hasn't connected it to her ORCID yet. So as I said before, ORCID is a digital object identifier. We encourage all researchers to sign up for an ORCID. It's free, and you can keep it throughout your whole research career, and you can put all your publications on there, and you can link it to your Scopus profiles. And it just allows people, if they are searching for you, it makes it easier for people to see who you are and what you've published. So we really do recommend you get an ORCID as well. So on here, it just gives us some key stats. It tells us how many documents this researcher has published. Gives us a bit of a nice graph here of kind of citations and number of documents. But then down here, it does give you some more detailed information. So this is where I might, if I was interested in Maria Bordons, she may publish in a research area that I'm interested in, and I'm interested to see who she collaborates with. I can just scroll down and click on co-authors here. So this allows me to look at, okay, who are the researchers that Maria is collaborating with? So this can be quite interesting. So if you find a researcher that you're interested in, have a look at who they're collaborating with, because it could potentially lead you to people who you may be able to contact or may be able to have a look at to see whether you could potentially collaborate with them in the future. So that's how to find out who someone is collaborating with. You can then, of course, click on any of these and investigate their profiles as well. So it's quite a nice way to get in and have a look at some authors. We can also have a look at who's citing Maria's documents, and that could be another useful way of identifying some potential collaborators. If you came in and had a look at your profile, you could come here and have a look at, okay, who's citing my documents here? So quite a lot of documents have cited Maria, but if this was you, you could have a look and go, oh, okay, well, this is interesting. This maybe isn't a research area that I was maybe thought that would be citing my research. Who's citing me? What kind of research area is citing me? That again could link through to potential new areas of research, could potentially link you through to people to collaborate with. So it's a good place to have a look. If you have published some papers, come and have a look at your profile and see who's starting to cite your work. But if you are looking at another researcher, you may be interested to look at those co-authors. And also, if we just go back to the list of 81 documents, if you are looking for yourself, you can start to see which of your papers are receiving the highest attention. So you can see that Maria's documents are listed by date order, but we can change that and say, okay, we want to look at the highest cited. So you can start to see, okay, which of my papers are receiving the highest attention? So this one here has received a very high number of citations. So you could be that would help maybe think, oh, well, this is an area of research that obviously people are interested in. Maybe that's something I want to investigate further. So it just gives you a little bit more information. So if you have started publishing or you do start publishing, do regularly come in and check your Scopus author profiles and see who's citing your work and see which of your papers are receiving those higher levels of attention. So exploring author profiles again, but this time looking at sources, so where an author might have published, which funding agencies has funded their research, and also looking at the subject areas that they are researching in. So you just have to do something slightly different in Scopus to look at this. So what I've shown you there is looking at an author profile and looking at their co-collaborators, looking at their documents and which are the most highly cited and who cited them. Now I'm just going to show you something slightly different. Again, it's still looking at author profiles, but we're just doing it in a slightly different way. So I am going to share my screen again and do a little demo. Okay, so again, I'm going to go into Scopus, I'm going to search on authors, and I am going to search for Maria again. So again, I've come through to my results. It's saying there's 2 author profiles for this person, Maria Bourdon. This time I'm going to do something slightly different. So instead of going through to her author profile page, I'm going to actually click through to her documents, because this is where we can do a bit more analysis around funding, around sources, around research areas. So I'm just going to click on the 81 documents here to go through to that search result. So basically what Scopus is doing is saying, okay, these are the 81 documents that are associated with Maria Bourdon's, and this is where I can do a little bit more analysis than I could do on the author profiles page. So what I'm going to first of all look for is the subject areas that Maria is publishing in. And this left-hand menu is the place that we're going to focus on in this section. So we've got the 81 documents, but we can use this side panel here to really interrogate these 81 documents a little bit better. So I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to look. But this is where I can actually, on this page, I can see who Maria is collaborating with as well. So you can see here, it's just another way of seeing who Maria is collaborating with on those 81 papers. But if you scroll down, what is quite useful here, it tells you which subject areas that Maria is publishing in. So this can be quite useful. So if you're looking for a researcher who is publishing research in a similar area of the research you're doing, you can start to look at, okay, which research areas are they actually publishing in? So it's quite interesting to see that. So Maria publishes work on kind of bibliometrics, on research metrics. So a majority of her papers are in these computer science, social sciences subject areas. But actually she has got 12 in medicine. So I might feel, okay, that's interesting. She's published 12 papers in the field of medicine. What are those 12 papers? That's quite interesting, because that might lead me through to other areas of research that I might want to investigate. So to look at those 12 papers, you can just click on them here, or you can just click the medicine filter and scroll up to the top and click on limit to, and it will limit those 81 papers just to those 12 in medicine. And then I could investigate those medicine papers, and that might help me to investigate that particular area and see whether I'd be interested in looking at publishing in that specific area. So it can be quite interesting to see. And she's also published, I mean, only a few, but the one in arts and humanities, Mathematics maybe not quite as surprising. Energy. So there's quite useful area to look at if you are analysing another person's author profile. And again, on this left-hand menu, this is where we can start to search for sources, for ideas of places where we may want to submit our research to. Again, just scroll down, and this is where we can look at the sources. So this is a really interesting part, because you might look at a particular researcher in your area that's researching on your research area, and you might be trying to get ideas of where you might submit your research to. This is an excellent place to come and have a look. So I can see that Maria, she's majority of her papers she's published in this Scientometrics journal. This is one of the big bibliometric journals, so I'm not surprised that she's publishing 22 papers in there. But also it gives me other journals here that maybe I wasn't aware of. Maybe I've definitely not heard of some of these journals, so it might just lead me through to some other places that I may want to investigate publishing in. So some of them are conference proceedings, so may not be that useful to you, but actually you might feel, oh, I've not heard of that conference, maybe I need to have a look at that conference. What is that? Do I want to investigate that further? So it can be a really good place if you're struggling to think about where you might submit your research. Coming into Scopus, looking at another researcher that publishes similar to research to you, and just having a look down this left-hand side, it can really help you to find some sources to publish. And again, you can interrogate these further. So I can click on this 22, and it would open up those 22 papers, and it would, I can see what kind of papers that Maria is publishing in those 22 papers, and that might give me a further idea of what kind of things are being published in Scientometrics. Okay, so I'll just close that down. And then finally, another really useful bit to this left-hand menu is the funding sources. So if you scroll right down to the bottom, you can see here funding sponsor. So you can see these are the funders that are associated with these research outputs. So again, it can be quite useful to you if you are thinking about trying to apply for funding, or you're just trying to find out where people are getting their funding from in a particular research area. Have a look on Scopus, look at their papers, and see which institutions or funding agencies are funding their research, because it could lead you to find out about some funding streams that you may not be aware of. So there's loads of other bits that you can do on this left-hand menu. You can obviously limit to language or what country that the papers have been published, but those are the ones that I kind of wanted to draw your attention to that are quite useful. So funding sponsor, the source, and the subject area. So what I want you to do now is, again, go and search for yourself or another researcher in your area and have a look. It might be useful to search for another researcher actually rather than yourself, and have a look which subject areas they're publishing in, which sources they're publishing in, and what are their funding sponsors, and see if that gives you any useful information. So again, just do the same process, but instead of clicking on the name of the author, we're actually going to be clicking on the number of documents. So that was the difference. We're actually clicking on the number of documents here rather than the author profile. Okay, I just want to briefly talk about using metrics responsibly. So we're using bibliometrics today. We're looking at author metrics. So we're looking at, how many papers an author has published, how many times they've been cited. And because of this, we need to make sure that we're using metrics responsibly and we're aware of how we can use those metrics responsibly. So basically, using metrics responsibly means that we're using them appropriately, and we're not misusing them. We're not kind of finding a metric for somebody and assessing their whole research just on this one metric, for example, the number of times their research has been cited. We need to use a basket of research assessment. Bibliometrics is just one of those things that you can use to assess or look at someone's research. We have a responsible metrics statement here at Leeds. I've put the link to that in the slides. And we all need to engage with those principles when we're using metrics. We also sign, we're a signatory to DORA, which is the San Francisco Declaration on Research Assessment. So again, that lists out how we can use metrics responsibly. For example, we shouldn't be assessing an author or a researcher on where they are publishing. So we shouldn't be looking at journal impact factors and assessing an author's research based on where they are actually publishing their research. We need to be looking at the individual research. So a number of factors can affect the value of a metric, and I think it's just really important that we're aware of these. I'm not going to go into them really in detail, but when you're looking at an early career researcher, they may not have published very much. But when you look at a senior researcher, they may have been publishing for the last 30 years and will have had lots of documents and citations. So it would not be appropriate to compare those researchers against each other in terms of metrics. Disciplinary patterns can differ. So in some disciplines, people publish a lot. They publish very regularly. In other disciplines, they won't publish as regularly. So again, it's not appropriate to compare those metrics against each other. It's not appropriate to compare researchers against each other. This one here, just the researcher profile one, this is really important. The background of a researcher or the circumstances can affect the value of a metric. It affects their ability to do research. So for example, looking at gender, research has shown that women publish less on average than men, and men are more highly cited than women. And particularly thinking about COVID and what effect that had on women researchers, and evidence has shown that it affected their research output a lot more than men. So again, it's not appropriate to compare researchers against each other. Again, race research has shown that researchers of colour find it a lot more difficult to get access to the research funding, and that is for a number of different reasons, but a lot of it is to do with racism within the scholarly publishing industry. So again, some researchers may not have been able to access that research funding to do that research. And again, where researchers are from, if they're from a part of the world where there isn't much funding available in their countries, they won't have been able to publish as much as researchers from other countries where there is more funding available. So just lots to talk about on this topic, but I'm just covering it very briefly, that we need to be aware of these differences and these factors that can affect the value of the metrics. So if you are using bibliometrics, you are going and having a look at researchers' metrics, you need to be aware of some of these factors and make sure that you use metrics responsibly.